Good evening. This is John Bushka. I just want to talk a little bit about a posting I did on my WordPress site today, and I'll give you the link in the description. I've written a personal history treatment. It's in 4 posts, and it's partly to deal with an issue that's going on in the news, a couple of issues, but it's also to help me organize a sort of film strip or slideshow I'm going to make as a video early in July, which basically will follow my suggestion for how to make the movie. This is organized a little bit differently, but if there is a professional treatment being written by someone who is hired, and if they want to look at this and find this, they're perfectly welcome to look at it, and it might help with the details. There's a lot of details in these 4 posts because it kind of covers my life, but it picks on certain issues, and I'll just go through them very quickly. And they have the tag personal history treatment. And the first one was on June the 9th, and I explained my background as a youngster all the way from my being a growing little boy and being in grade school, taking piano, having trouble with physical education and with doing physical stuff, being perceived as not, very masculine and everything, sort of outgrowing it in puberty a little bit. And you can see from the title of the post, I'm a little concerned about what would happen with somebody like me today, given the debates that are going on. So that was the point of this post. Then the second post follows my work career up until the time while I was living away in New Jersey, New York City, and Texas, until I came back, and it covers my coming out as gay a second time and moving into the city, the links I went to do that, my association with Paul Rosenfels and the 9th Street Center, and then another group called Understanding. And then what happened when I was living in Dallas with the AIDS epidemic. My moving there probably gave me more time, not to have as high a good chance of getting infected, and I never in fact got infected. And that covers my history until I come through into the middle 90s. This covers the time up until I wrote the first Do Ask Do Tell book, which of course I've been showing you. That's the Do Ask Do Tell Gay Conservative Lashes Back. Then up, and that's sort of the issue, because I was working for a company that dealt with the military and insurance company at the time. That led to my relocation to Minneapolis, and eventually we got to having 9/11 and the disruption, and eventually I was laid off and given a big package to retire on. And there was a company I was working for. It was ING Reliostar. That's the building on Washington Avenue in Minneapolis. And then the third post, which I call 3A, because the third post was really a 2-part post because it's so long. The third post covered what happened when as I became started learning to use the internet world, the web 1.0, and shortly after the book was published. And then of course the layoff happened, and I moved back here and essentially lived with my mother and had odd jobs. I substitute taught for a while, but I never really proved I could get back into the workforce. And there are things that maybe I could have been expected to do that I really didn't. And so that was sort of the post 3A. It was mainly about Web 1.0 and my using the internet with simple files, putting my books online and putting a lot of essays online in simple HTML, being pretty effective because the internet was not that well developed yet. And so I was very effective with the gays in the military issue, staying in there until my mother died at almost the same time that the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy was repealed, which is what this post ends with. And then the fourth post is maybe the most controversial one. It's the one I put up today. And I did inherit an estate. You don't always get to do everything you want when you, let me bring my picture back in here. You don't always get to do what you want when you inherit things. So a lot of times there are people you're responsible for. I didn't really have very much of that. I named some beneficiaries. There were a couple of relatives, and there was one of them has passed away with ALS. So, and then there were a number of organizations, and there's been some political changes, some turmoil in the last few years. So my relationship with one of them might be a little bit strained. But you actually, a lot of the estate belongs to the beneficiaries. It doesn't really belong to me. I actually paid them back to live in my condo, even though I administer the estate. I explain all that, and then I explain how I started moving into different blogging platforms, and then how with Trump's election and with Charlottesville and with January 6th and so forth. This is an interesting picture. And then with the pandemic, which preceded January 6th, how culture seemed to change, and my attitude of upward affiliation seemed to change with people. My being able to see people as people kind of thing changed, and it became very difficult. And because of the political climate with the tech companies, I downsized my blog presence a lot at the start of 22, but at the same time, I started going to pitch fests with the participation of my POD publisher, iUniverse, and I spent a lot of money on a new campaign to try to sell my books. It's actually important, and it's ways to prove you can sell something to actually have a real business. I talk about that, and that brings me up to where we are today. I talk on the end of the post a little bit about how concerned I am about what's going on with the gender debate and the censorship that has accompanied it, that has gone after it, and I won't get into this in this particular video, but there is a lot of radicalism that a lot of us weren't ready for. But yet 60 years ago, when I was thrown out of college, by telling the dean that I thought I was gay was radical. And putting gays in the military, just 10 years, allowing gays to serve openly in the military, just 10 years after being proposed, less than 10 years after the AIDS epidemic, that sounded radical. So sometimes we have to think about radical things. I've talked about that before. But of course, involving minors, that's a big deal with me. So you can read this. I just wanted to also say that I do have a novel to work on. The novel was called Angel's Brothers, and the protagonist was sort of a spy who had been in the military, had become a civilian because of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy, and and was being sent around the world tracking an unusual virus and the possible landing of aliens, and it involves me as a background character, and then somebody with supernatural powers. And after, with the Ukraine war and everything, I decided that a novel set around the world wasn't very practical, given that the political climate, a lot of original novel had to do with Finland and the possibility of Russia and Finland having a problem. This was something I was thinking about more than 10 years ago and wrote blog posts about on the old blogs. But that wouldn't work right now. So I'm changing it to have a journalist in Dallas who believes that his fiancée might be an angel or might be supernatural. That's one of the things. And there's a place called the Academy in West Texas in the original novel. That'll still be there, and that'll be the other thing the journalist has been investigating. But the new place is another commune that his girlfriend belongs to, which complicates things. And gradually the journalist will learn that an alien landing is coming, and then when the aliens land, who will be the angels of the Bible. That's my idea. They will be able to travel by getting relativistic speeds so that the time doesn't pass as much for them. But I might throw in the Albuquerque Drive or something. I might make it more rich. The politics of what would happen if Earth was going to be evacuated because of something. That would be an interesting theme to write a series of novels and maybe make a movie franchise where you could really follow the practices of screenwriting the way I've been learning them, from Top Development and so forth. A site that I like, whose talks I attend and everything. It might be a chance to write a series that would get away from me, but get away on some new material. So that's what I had for tonight, and thank you for listening.